Howdy, folks. Grey Hawk 4 coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer and your resident Cold War veteran. And that is relevant for me anyway, because of what's going on in the world as we speak. So, looks like I might already have a couple people in here. So, I don't know how much gaming we're going to talk about here tonight. I don't know if anybody's going to even be here tonight because Elden Ring literally just dropped a couple of hours ago, I think. So everybody's probably playing Elden Ring. I can't say that I blame them. I'm probably going to end up picking it up pretty soon because I don't see it getting review bombed or anything like that. All the early reviews from the people that got the review copies and everything are glowing reviews. So I may be picking it up at full price. I did not pre-order it because I don't pre-order games anymore, but I may end up getting it. Cheers. So the main thing that I plan on talking about during this live is the elephant in the room. Yes, I have a gaming channel, but when something as monumental as the possibility of World War III breaking out, we're going to talk, at least I'm going to talk about it. Added in there that I served over in Germany during the Cold War, when this is like the bad fucking sequel. You know, the Cold War was the first movie, you know, and now we're getting the bad sequel. It seems like that's what it feels like to an old Cold War veteran here. Hell, I was in Germany when the wall fell, when the Berlin Wall fell. So here we go. Cold War redo Electric Boogaloo. What the fuck? Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. We can talk about Elden Ring. I haven't played it yet, but everything that I have seen says that it's going to be a good game, with the exception of Mistra. Now, I don't know if Mistra, for various reasons, if one of my main followers and one of my moderators, Mistra, if she's going to be here tonight, because it's pretty late where she is. She's actually over in Europe. But I did see that she had a comment about Elden Ring, and her comment was that it was decent, but it wasn't like as glowing as everybody is saying. Now, perhaps, hey Bastille, how are you? So if Mistra pops in, we will certainly ask her about it. But the first thing I'm going to talk about, and the main thing I'm going to talk about, is the what's happening over in Ukraine. Now, I know I have some of my regulars are my age, so they will certainly remember the Cold War and all that. So I'm going to be speaking from the perspective of somebody that served in the U.S. Army in Germany during the Cold War, including up to and pretty good, Colin. How are you? Up to and including when the Berlin Wall fell, and even past that, I was still in country, even past when the wall fell. Now, and when I say from that perspective, it's because the behavior that we're seeing out of Vladimir Putin, and now that he has actually gone into another country, is not only reminiscent of the Cold War, but it's actually reminiscent to how World War II started. And I'm not going to go into the full history lesson of all. I'm not that old. I wasn't alive during World War II. I wasn't born until the late 60s. So, but I do know a little bit about the Cold War. And I think I've shown this before, um, but uh, when I was stationed in Germany before the wall fell, the USSR was still the Soviet Union was still alive and well. The Cold War was still in full effect and all that. I was part of a nuclear weapons unit um, that was stationed to protect the Fulda Gap, to protect for exactly against what Russia's doing to Ukraine during the Cold War. The fear was they were going to do it to West Germany, because at that time you still had East Germany and West Germany, two separate countries. West Germany, where we were, being the democratic, independent country, and the East Germany, which was controlled by the Soviet Union. And the fear was that if the Soviet Union at the time uh, had ever decided that they wanted to try and conquer more, like Vladimir Putin is doing now with Ukraine, they would do it through what's called the Fulda Gap into West Germany. And my unit, because we were a surface to surface ballistic uh, uh, battlefield tactical nuclear capable missile. We also had the capability of non-nuclear warheads, which is hopefully, if we would have ever had to use them, hopefully it would have been the non-nuclear version, obviously. But we did have the nuclear version available to us. Luckily, we didn't have to do any of that. But the threat was always there. The threat that what Putin is doing now to Ukraine, that threat to coming through into West Germany every day was there for us. And when I say us, I don't just mean the U.S. Army that were stationed in West Germany. I'm talking about for the Germans that we were there to protect. Now, mind you, of course, there was the German army that we worked, in cohesion with. They even used our same system. There were German Lance units. I was in the Lance missiles. There was German Lance that we helped cross train with, and so forth. But every day, I was there for 3 straight years. Every day we were wondering, is this the day that we get sent out to the field? What we call alert advance, which is an alert where you got to lickety split, get loaded up, and out you go to some. You don't even know where you're going. Your commanders are just telling you to go, and you go out. You follow your commanders out to this position, and then you don't know, is that it? Is this it? Is Russia coming across? You didn't know. And sometimes we would have alerts where we knew they were coming. We knew we were going to be going to the field for a training exercise or an evaluation or whatever. We knew that, but there were times where, and I lived off base with my first wife, so I'm living off base, and there was a system in place to get everybody back to the base immediately if there was an alert to roll out and everything. And uh, there were times where we get a call 3:30 in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. All they say when you answer the phone is alert advance. And that means, it's a French word, like a French term that means alert or something like that. And I will put that on silent. So there were times where we would get, now I'm in West Germany, we're right by the Fulda Gap, get a call at 3:30 in the morning, 4 in the morning. We had no idea that we were going to have any kind of a drill, and they just say alert advance, which means you get your ass into the motor pool. You go down the arms, you draw your weapon, you go to the motor pool, you turn on your vehicle, start loading up all your shit to go to war, basically. And including the missiles and the whole shittery, everything. And then you're going to roll out. Now, if we had what we called practice missiles that you would use for all your training and everything like that, which were inert, they weren't real missiles and everything. They were same weight, same everything. You couldn't launch them. But sometimes when they would have us roll out, we would roll out with our trucks empty. Now, in that case, you don't know if you're rolling out with empty trucks. They're basically doing it as an absolute 100% simulation of that you're going to war, and you would roll to where the real missiles were kept, and and you would even practice sometimes loading those up, and then they would say something like, oh, at the end of the load up or whatever, they'd say, okay, simulation over or whatever, but you never knew. And there were times where we would roll out to the field, um, and we don't know. No one said a word. Is this real? Are the Russians coming across? Are we getting ready to go to war? And there were times where we didn't know for the first day, and then we finally the word would get around that no, this was a drill, this was an unscheduled drill or whatever. But it was real as shit to us because you didn't know up until that moment, because you're pulling all the crates of live ammo, crates of MREs, the water trucks, the water buffaloes we called them. It's all going, and it's like, okay, is this the real deal? And so for 3 years, I and everybody else there, and then of course all the Germans that lived in West Germany lived through that possibility of, are the Russians going to come through? Until the wall fell. And when the wall fell, the end of 1989, there was this massive celebration that it's over. That threat of the Russians coming through, we think it's pretty much over because the USSR, as it was, the Soviet Union, as it was known, starts breaking up. Basically, the other countries are saying, no, we're breaking away from USSR. We're going to have our own. And Ukraine was one of them. And so it felt, it was a victory. It was like, okay, the hostilities of the Cold War are coming to an end. And then you had all this period between then and now. And when I say now, I mean recent history of the last 3 years, where Putin started gearing back up again for the Cold War, what we thought was the next Cold War. But now he's gone into another country. Now, he didn't go into a NATO country, because if he'd gone into a NATO country, we'd actually be at war right now. But Ukraine's not in NATO, so that's where we're at. There's some thought that at some point, if he takes Ukraine, which he probably will, if he decides to go into a different country, which is basically what Hitler did in World War II. He went into Poland first, and then he just kept going. He went in Czechoslovakia, he went up and took Denmark and Sweden and all this other stuff. If Putin decides he's going to keep going, then it's going to be World War III. Because if he goes into a NATO country, all the NATO countries are obligated to defend that, whatever country that is. And that's when So for an old Cold War veteran like myself, it's like flashbacks, and I feel bad for the people in the Ukraine right now. Matter of fact, there is and as a matter of fact, I'm going to pull up the Twitter feed right now, because I'm going to go to this particular person. Okay, so some of you probably, she has a lot of followers. She has 85,000 followers. Her name is Zepla, and it's at Zepla with a X, XEPLA, at XEPLA, Zepla. She is I guess, a very well-known YouTuber that does Final Fantasy 14 videos. So she was in Ukraine still when the invasion started, and she was tweeting out that, I don't know what I'm going to do. She had stayed because she was trying to get paperwork to get her pets out with her. There was I had to have special paperwork, I guess. And so late last night, she tweets out that she finally got in the car and started heading for Poland, and they made it into Poland. So even though I don't know this person, I just follow her on Twitter as of yesterday. And the only reason I know about her is because Mistra, one of our regulars here, Mistra tweeted out that, a tweet that Zepla had sent out saying that she was stuck in the Ukraine and didn't know what she was going to do, et cetera, et cetera. And so a lot of us started following to follow along and see what was happening. But I've never met her, but she's a person. with a life and family and all this, and it's all being uprooted because of some guy's ego. That's all there is. That's it. That's it. I mean, that's because Putin wants to take the Ukraine because he thinks he's playing the fucking giant game of Risk. What the fuck? Sorry, Bastille. I just saw that your folks are from Ukraine. Are they in Ukraine right now, or are they have they since moved somewhere else? Because the way you wrote that from, hopefully that means that they're not in Ukraine right now. So, because you know, now the mass exodus, people are going to have to leave their businesses, they're going to have to leave their homes. You know, it's I can't imagine it. It's similar to the way that you could put it into terms for us to understand here in America. This is the equivalent of Great Britain now coming over. Okay, good. Glad to hear it, Bastille. But do you guys have extended family that are still there, like cousins and shit like that? Or I mean, because I'm sure that you probably have a footprint still there of some type. So I hope everybody's well. I hope everybody's okay. But this will be the equivalent of Great Britain sailing over and attacking the U.S. because we used to be under Great Britain's rule. Ukraine used to be under Russia's rule when it was the USSR, the Soviet Union. They broke away and became independent as Ukraine. We broke away and became independent as the United States of America. This would be the same as if Great Britain coming back over and attacking us now and saying we're going to try and take the United States back, or because of what Putin has done, if they came back and said, "Oh, we're going to take, whatever, Maryland and New York and Connecticut or whatever, just to start off," because that's what Putin's done. He's taken a couple little areas that he says, "Oh, he's some omnipotent god or something." He says, "Oh, those are now independent. They're not part of the Ukraine anymore. Those are independent, and they moved in as peacekeepers." Right? This would be the same as England coming back over and trying to, because we were once under them, and them saying, "Oh, well, hey Chupa, how are you, man?" So that would be the same type of shit that's going on with the Ukraine. They've been independent. They've been a democracy for 30 years. And all of a sudden now Russia's just going to say, "Oh, guess what? Nah, we're just going to take it back over." Okay, so Bastille, you have some family in Poland and Serbia. So my understanding is because Zepla last night, she made it to Poland, and apparently a shit ton of other people from Ukraine that's where they're evacuating to. Poland's one of the places. Colin says, yeah, it's as if Boris Johnson landed troops in Maine and claiming that Maine has a UK separatist movement. Exactly, Colin. My point. Couldn't have put it fucking better, man. Right on, man. Cheers. It's exactly the same type of shit. Yeah. The rest of the world would be like, holy shit, what the hell is Boris doing? You can't do that. The US hasn't bothered them. And up until who knows how long ago, the Ukraine and Russia, they didn't have any issues. It's just recently that supposedly there's some separatist movements and that type of thing that and that's what Putin is saying. you know so it's not a good deal. Anyway, but I figured it would be a good time. I don't know if I think I've shown this on an actual video before, never on a live before, but have I ever shown you guys what this thing is, or have you guys know what this is? This is called a Smellum card. And Smellum stands for Soviet Military Liaison Mission. And that yellow with the red Russian flag on it, that was the license plate cover that would have been, and there would have this number, the 3. There was only so many of them issued, and they just had single digits. This card was issued to all U.S. soldiers When we got over to Germany, the minute you get there, you get this handed this, and there's another one right here. I'm going to show you guys another one. And this is back during the Cold War. These vehicles that had these were Russian vehicles that had these special license plates on them, which allowed them to travel the Autobahn only in West Germany as a means of conveyance to get from one point to the next. So that if they were Soviet liaisons, they were well, they were spies, but the Russians, of course, were tricky and said, "Oh no, there are liaisons, so they can liaison to your embassy, or they can liaison, that type of shit." But they were spies. That's why these cards were issued, because they were only allowed on the autobahns. And if any of us, as U.S. Service people over there, were to see a smelling vehicle, this card told us exactly what to do with that vehicle. We were supposed to, no matter what, it didn't matter whether we were in our civilian car or a military vehicle or what, we're supposed to try and block that vehicle if they weren't on the Autobahn. Like if they had gotten off the Autobahn and they were driving through the city where I was, we were to block them in and call the MPs. And it told us exactly what to do on this card. We had to extend military courtesy to them and everything, but we were basically to detain them so they could not get away, call the MPs so they could come and either arrest them, interrogate them, whatever it was that they had to do. But that's because they were spies. Everybody knew they were spies, but they were allowed to go on the Autobahns as long as they didn't get off, and they couldn't stop on the Autobahn either. So if you saw them stopped on the Autobahn, which would mean maybe they stopped to take pictures and stuff like that, then you would have to detain them there. And it was pretty serious shit. I can read it to you guys if you want. We were supposed to report the license number, the color, the make of the vehicle, the time, the date, the location, down to the kilometer, stone marker, coordinates if possible, direction of travel, how many occupants, special observations. Were occupants out of the vehicle using cameras, binoculars, maps, notebooks, etc.? Was the vehicle involved in running convoys near military units or installations near maneuver areas, etc.? So if we were doing maneuvers, let's say, and all of a sudden we see a smelling vehicle show up while we're doing maneuvers with our nuclear missile system, you see where I'm going with this? They got no fucking business being there. Detain them immediately because they're obviously spying on our nuclear missile system. Luckily, that never happened. I never saw a smelling vehicle the entire time I was in Germany. Other people told me stories that they did, and they boxed them. And there's pictures, you can Google it. There's pictures of U.S. troops blocking in smelling vehicles with tanks and shit, and armored personnel carriers and cars and everything else. You can find that if you want to look it up. But then it says you are a detention may be effected by any member of the U.S. forces. If possible, the smelling vehicles should be boxed in by U.S. vehicles to keep them from leaving the scene. Once detention is effected, you do show military courtesy and ask the occupants for identification. Make sure smelling vehicle has no way to get away by suddenly driving through a ditch or taking similar action, which must be expected. So you'd have to think about like any possible way they would try to get out. You had to try and block it. Secure the scene and direct traffic on the highway to keep obstruction to a minimum, making absolute sure that the MPs are coming to take over. So that's back in the old days. My point is, with what Putin has done now, we still have troops in Germany. Is something like this going to be a thing again? Are they going back to this kind of shit? Are we reverting back to the Cold War type shit again? It sure does feel like it. Um, anyway, so yeah, so I knew this wasn't gonna be a very much of a gaming live today because I've been um did you ever spot those smelly guys on the road? No, I never did personally, but I knew other soldiers who had that experience. They were, I mean, there's single digits on the license plate number, so there couldn't have been too many of these vehicles. But um, and again, you can Google if you want to see actual smelling vehicles stopped by other military vehicles boxing them in and stuff. There's actually old pictures of when they detain them and stuff like that. Um, but seeing what's been happening in the last 24 hours, it's kind of bringing all that back. You know, um, I have my piece of the Berlin Wall in here. Um, if anybody wants me to, I'd have to unpack it real quick. I got it packed away in here. This is an old. You're required by law in Germany to have a first aid kit in your vehicle at all times. It's part of the safety inspection you go through. Um, for if you own a vehicle in Germany, I don't know if it's still that way. It was back then, but you had to have a first aid kit. You had to have road triangles. You had to have rubber gloves. Um, I think that might have been it. But anyway, I use this for my piece of the Berlin Wall. I've got it all packaged up in there, and I can do that. I can unpack it real quick and show it to you guys if you guys want to. But if nobody wants me to, I'm not going through the trouble of unpacking it. So um, it looks like we only got 3 people in here anyway. So um, I assumed that this would be very low turnout tonight because a lot of people Elden Ring just dropped, so I'm sure people are playing that. So it's not a bad idea to get your mind off of this, what's happening. Because I've found it very difficult to turn away from the news and not watch what's happening. I don't know about you guys, but for me, I have to. I've just been glued to the TV, trying to see what the hell is happening. And what's weird, the other thing is that some of you guys that are of my age that are in here, I don't know if you guys saw it today, but the Russians captured the Chernobyl nuclear plant today. They went in and I guess it was being defended by some Ukrainian troops. They defeated them, and they took because the plant itself, reactor 4, is covered with that sarcophagus thing because of the accident. The other reactors were still active up until the last one was deactivated in like 2000 or 2001 or something like that. However, it's still in the process of being decommissioned. Nuclear power plants, um, nuclear power plants stay. It takes for like 20, 30, 40 years to completely deactivate them and decommission them because there's all that nuclear waste and nuclear material and all that has to be contained and has to be processed and for storage and all that, and that's all part of the decommissioning process. um so that nuclear waste storage, that's what they call Chernobyl now. Colin, they call it a nuclear waste because they're not, the reactors are no longer producing anything, so they now call it a nuclear waste storage facility. That's what they're talking, that's what you heard. If they destroyed the sarcophagus over reactor 4, Europe's fucked because that was the only thing keeping the radiation from getting back up into the air and spreading. Because that that radiation, the reason that sarcophagus, if you guys haven't done it already, Google it. That concrete fucking, that's the largest man-made object ever made. That sarcophagus that is moved, that they had to put on rails and slide it over the containment. They already had poured concrete and shit all over um, as the first level of containment, and then they built this sarcophagus thing that goes over it. If they have destroyed that in this process, I don't think they would. I don't think they'd be that goddamn stupid. But let's say they accidentally did, Europe's in for a bad fucking time. because the radiation's going to get out. There's nothing stopping the radiation from. It's going to be radioactive for 100 years. They said that shit gets up in the atmosphere with the wind. It takes it wherever it's going to take it. Um, so you know, right after Chernobyl happened, they all the different countries were um, uh, keeping their kids inside. They weren't letting them play in the grass because the fallout was landing on everything, and they didn't want And animals were becoming, and so the milk was no good because the milk was radiated, and all that, and so that sarcophagus and everything is holding all that in. I don't think they would be. I hope they didn't destroy that, Colin, because if they did, that's ridiculously stupid. Now, what people are speculating, the reason that they took Chernobyl now is they want to use it um, as kind of a bargaining chip type of a thing, so that if they ever have to go to the negotiating table with NATO about perhaps giving part of Ukraine back or whatever, or having sanctions lifted. Let's say they want to have some of their sanctions that have all been heaped on them now. They might say some crazy shit like, um, "Hey, Lapis," um, they might say some crazy shit like, "If you guys don't lift the sanctions on us, these heavy sanctions, we're going to destroy the sarcophagus and let the radiation just take off." They might. I mean, who knows what Putin's capable of, right? Now, there's no saying he would do that, but there's no saying he wouldn't threaten to do it. Hey, Eddie Green. I hope you don't mind me saying Eddie, because I was used to calling you Edward. Um, but I'm assuming you're okay with it since you put it on your handle. So, um, hey, those of you that just joined, we're just talking about the shit that's going on in the world. It's hard to talk about gaming right now with everything that's going on in Ukraine right now. Especially as I started the live with that I'm a Cold War veteran from when I served in Germany during the Cold War. I served there up until the wall fell, and then I was even there a little bit after when the wall fell. So, and I was telling everybody that I'll wait till Edward gets back. So, yeah, so it's crazy shit. And what's weird about this particular instance now is that with social media everywhere, uh, we're basically able to watch the war like firsthand. People recording the war. Like um, World War II, they had newsreels and shit that came out weeks later. And everything else. We're seeing it as it's happening, and that's happened to a certain extent with like the Gulf War and Desert Storm and Desert Shield and all that. That happened to us, but now literally, um, people are loading shit up on TikTok and Twitter, right? Your average everyday folks. Even during Desert Storm and Desert Shield and all that, that was reporters doing that stuff. Now it's just average everyday Joes just recording shit and putting it right up. Um, there was an interesting thing that happened today. I don't know if you guys saw it. Did you see the woman that went over some airborne troops? Some Russian airborne troops landed in this one particular town. And there was a whole bunch of them, and she walks right over to them and starts fucking bawling them out. Like and she's doing it in Russian. Of course, I can't understand it. And she's like, you guys shouldn't be here. What do you think you're doing here? This is our country, da da da. And this guy's got a fucking AK-47, and everything. And she's just got balls of steel standing there ripping into this guy, to the point that at the end of the conversation, they translated, and she told them, she said, you better put some sunflower seeds in your pockets so that when you die on our land, something can grow there. She told this motherfucker with an AK-47, a bunch of them there. I mean, you talk about guts. I wouldn't have had the guts to. I mean, there's nothing stopping those guys from turning around and just blasting that lady. I mean, but she didn't give two damns. And yeah, I mean, my hat's off to her. I mean, hey, damn. I mean, she must have been, yeah, exactly, hardcore babushka. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we're seeing, it's different now. Um, so anyway, there's some more of you guys in here now. I got my piece of the Berlin Wall in here. If anybody wants to see it, it's all packed in here, so it'll take me a second to get it unpacked and everything, because I'm real careful with it. Um, so if anybody wants to see it, just put it in the comments. If not, I'll just keep it boxed. I won't bother unpacking it. But uh, because I thought it was appropriate that it feels like we're reliving. Now we're back in the Cold War again to show the piece of the Berlin Wall I got when I was over in Germany serving during the first Cold War. Honestly, gives me hope for their resistance. If their grannies are that way, what are their veterans like? Yeah, there was another video I saw today of a dad who was putting his kids and his wife on. I can't remember if he was putting them on a train. I think he was putting them on a train. He's going to stay and fight the Russians, and he was putting them on. And they're leaving to go where to Poland or somewhere, getting out of country, and they're all bawling and everything because he's going to stay and fight, and he's getting his kids and shit out of there, which any dad would do. And yeah, I mean it's going to be interesting to see. Well, Edward wants to see it, so I guess I'm going to unpack this thing here. Let's see here. So just give me a second here to get this thing out. Okay, because it's actually every time I do this, it crumbles a little bit because it's just old concrete. So as hard as it is to watch, all this visibility is perfect for a conflict with Putin, who's so prone to use disinformation tactics. Hard to lie about what's on. Exactly. I thought the same thing. That the one thing this does is it doesn't provide him the ability to use his fucking disinformation. Because if there's war crimes committed, like let's say one of them did shoot that lady, it wasn't her that was filming it. She did film it herself, but there was another person filming it from a distance. And that would have, and everybody now, I don't know about you guys, but when I film something on my phone, it goes right to the cloud. Even if they come over, grab my phone and smash it, that shit's already in the cloud, baby. It's already uploaded. So, anyway, so here is my piece of the Berlin Wall. It's not a very fancy piece. I'll tell you the story about it. So that's my piece of the Berlin Wall. There's a little bit of graffiti right there, that pink graffiti right there. There's some rust on it. That was probably from some rebar, some rust there from rebar or whatever, or from wire. Because this shit wasn't constructed very well. It was just hastily poured concrete with chicken wire and shit in it. But anyway, that's my chunk, and that's a pretty good sized chunk. And I can tell you guys a story. So I was there, and it was November the 9th, 1989. The wall fell. So we are, when I say we, I'm talking about the soldiers. Everybody has guard duty all the time. It's kind of you're always on rotation for guard duty and shit. There was all kinds of duty. There was guard duty at the side gate. There was guard duty at the main gate of another concern. There was what we called CP, which was community patrol, where you'd go up and down the Strasse, which was like the main strip where all the bars were, and you basically babysat the American drunks, the drunk soldiers, to make sure they didn't get arrested by the Polizei. We were there to make sure if we saw them stumbling around about to get in a fight or something like that, we grab them by the shirt collar and say, no, your ass is going to the barracks and go to sleep. You ain't fighting with nobody. You shut your mouth. You're done drinking, and call the MPs. The MPs put them in a van, take them to the barracks so they go to sleep. That's what community patrol was. And then you had CQ, which was charge of quarters, where you basically are babysitting the drunks in the barracks. you notice a pattern here. All night, it's 24 hour duty. You're on duty for 24 straight hours, and then you get the next day off to sleep. But for 24 hours, you're basically in the hallway of the barracks babysitting all the troops and shit. So you have duty all the time. So the wall falls on November the 9th, 1989. And on the 10th, the next day, I had guard duty, me and another guy on the side gate. And when the wall fell, we went to ThreatCon Bravo. Um, and the ThreatCon levels are um, uh, Alpha would be like the highest, you know. So you go, Charlie, Delta. Yeah, I think Delta was the lowest, I think, and then it went Charlie and Bravo. Bravo was like the only one higher than that was Alpha, if I remember correctly. So at Bravo, all guard stations are immediately doubled up with 2 guards. Everybody's in full combat gear because normally you would just be in your uniform with your M16, your pistol belt, all that stuff. That was normal guard duty. If you're at ThreatCon Bravo, you went to combat gear. You went to your Kevlar, your flak vest, your what we called your LBE with all your shit, everything. And so we're standing on the side gate, and it's about 2:00 in the morning, 3:00. It was dark 30, and we're standing there, and the street that we were guarding, the entrance from the street we were guarding, that little street there was like a side street, so there wasn't a lot of traffic, especially at 2:00 in the morning. All of a sudden, we see some headlights coming, and it's a little tiny car, and we see it coming, and we're watching it, and it even sounds different. It doesn't sound like a car that we normally, the normal BMWs and Mercedes and shit. That those are BMWs and Mercedes are very common everyday cars in Germany, and so we hear this thing, and it's coming, and as it's getting closer, we notice that the front license plate's weird, and because the West German ones were long white license, and this, if I remember, was like an oval. And we're looking at it, and we're like, the fuck is that? And then it kind of hit both of us at the same time. We're watching, and it was one of those Lanzas or whatever the hell, a Trabant. I think it's called a Trabant. The only cars they had, personal vehicles you had in East Germany, were Trabants. That was it. Your choice was, do you want a Trabant or do you want a Trabant? And there are these little weird looking cars. You can Google it. And that's, you couldn't get them outside of East Germany. And that was the only car they had in East Germany. Well, here comes a Trabant puttering down the street right in front of us. And we're watching, and we're like, we looked at each other and we went, holy shit, that's an East German car. And you would have never, for 40 years, you would have never seen that because the wall was up. They were not allowed to come into West Germany, hence the wall. And here we are seeing free people that literally just got freedom with the wall falling, and they got their asses into West Germany, and here they go right down the street. And I'm like, wow. It might be fiberglass. I can't remember what it's made of, but there's a funky looking little car. They're tiny too. They're not very big. And it struck with me. I'll never forget that, because we were like, okay, this shit's real. The wall is down. We just saw our first East Germans just driving through, like free, and then that week, that, if I remember, that was probably that might have been like a Friday or a Saturday. I can't remember. I think it was weekend or close to the weekend. The next Monday, we're in we go to the motor pool. You go to the motor pool when you're in what they call garrison. When you're not out in the field, you're in garrison. In garrison, you go to the motor pool and you work on your vehicles all day, or you work on nets, or you do training or something like that, whatever. But you go to the motor pool every day to check your vehicles. And so you go to the motor pool, and your lieutenants, you normally have a formation at the barracks, outside the barracks. Then you go to work, which is up at the motor pool. That's how it normally. Then you have a formation before lunch or after lunch, and then you have a formation before you get off duty for the night. It was weird to go up to the motor pool and then have another formation. But we get up to the motor pool, and the 2 lieutenants for our 2 sections, we were in the firing sections. The 2 lieutenants say, hey, we want everybody in formation. And they tell the NCOs, get them in formation. So they say, everybody form up, you got to get in formation. And we're all looking at it like, oh shit, what the hell? We never get in formation in the motor pool, whatever. They get us into formation, and the two lieutenants get us to attention and the whole bit. Then they put us to parade rest, and they say, "Hey, guys, it was Lieutenant Renshaw. I don't remember the other lieutenant's name, but I'll never forget Lieutenant Renshaw. He was a good guy. Lieutenant Renshaw says, "Hey, me and whoever, I can't remember the other lieutenant's name. He goes, me and Lieutenant, let's say, Lieutenant James. Lieutenant James, we went to Berlin this weekend. They drove as soon as they knew the wall fell. For the weekend, they got in their vehicles. Now they were officers. Officers don't pull guard duty, so they have free weekends. They went and they drove straight to Berlin, and they got a gigantic chunk, big ass chunk about like that, of the Berlin Wall. They were there as it was being pulled apart and everything. And they had brought it back to us, and they had it in a big ass duffel bag. And so while they had us in formation, they pulled this thing out of the duffel bag, and it's got all that graffiti and shit on it and everything else. And while they have us there at parade rest and everything, they took it up, smashed it on the ground in the motor pool, busted into all these pieces, and they said, "Troops, fall out, grab yourself a piece of history." And they said, and I grabbed this piece right there. It's a true story. So I didn't get the best piece. I mean, there were people that got better pieces had more. I think I wasn't fast enough, I guess, or I didn't think enough to look for more graffiti on it or whatever. But I got me a piece. So that's the story. So I'll repack that later. So and then I get out of the Army in Germany. I leave. It's called ETSing. I get out in the following May. I get out. So I eat what they call end of term service. I ETS. So you fly back to the States. They out process you, and then you're a civilian, right? And it was maybe 2 years after that the Gulf War happened or whatever, and they sent my unit that I would have been, if I had stayed in, I would have been in. They sent them to they sent them to Iraq. What was funny was my unit never came back from Iraq. They dissolved or whatever because my missile system was antiquated. The Lance missile system was antiquated. It was being replaced by something called JTACMs. And so they just, after the war, they just basically the commanding officer, lieutenant colonel, whatever, said, wrote to Washington and said, "Hey, there's really no reason for us to go back to Germany because we're being phased out anyway." And they basically said, "Yeah, just do a decommissioning ceremony right there in Iraq or wherever they were." They just decommissioned the unit or whatever, and they never went back to those barracks, And after that. Soon after that, the barracks itself, the Kaserne, was turned back over to the German government because we were only good looking. Well, if you really are Peter North, congratulations, man. So I get back, and right after that, they turn this thing back over. They turn this back over to the German government, and they put a plaque. If you go to this, what is it, the community part of my YouTube page, I actually have a picture of that plaque. It's one of the few pictures that I've put, and it basically says, I can't remember exactly what it says. Here, let me read. I can probably read it to you guys if I go. I can just do it myself here. I'm doing it right now as we speak. It says, in honor of the armed forces of the United States who served in Aschaffenburg from 1945 to 1992 as partners in peace and guardians of freedom. And it has all the different units that were there. So all that with piece of the Berlin Wall and that plaque and everything else, and then to see what Putin's doing now, it was like, well, damn, it's like all that hard work, everything we did to get peace in the area and get the threats put away and all that, and here he is back again, his bullshit back again. Um, I remember a documentary about Germany after the wall fell. It showed guys selling chunks of the wall, pretending amused all the chunks being sold put together to be twice the size. Yeah. Um, so, um, yeah. If they had the lieutenants weren't, they could have easily they could have each gotten one, and who knows, they might have each gotten a piece like that for themselves, that size, and then that one they brought and busted up for us. They might each have big ass pieces. Um, but they could have also kept that one, to sell it or whatever. But you know, I would never think about selling mine. Mine is, it'll be in my will when. See, I got pieces of the Berlin Wall on my fucking hand now, on my desk, because it crumbles every time I take it out of there. Like, that's weird. I'm literally cleaning pieces of the Berlin Wall off my desk. That's weird. Um, I bet you didn't think all that time 30 years ago you'd be telling a personal historical account of a major moment in history to a bunch of D&D and gaming nerds that just like hearing you talk. Well, I had no idea. I didn't think. I had forgotten I even had this piece of the Berlin Wall until we moved, the first time. Me and my wife moved the first time, and I was like, oh yeah, because again, I just have it in this old first aid kit box, you know, um, and then I can't remember what it was. There was something that happened, um, a while back, a few years back. Something happened where I felt compelled to show that. I can't remember what happened, but something. Maybe it was the anniversary of the wall falling, something like that. And that was the first time I'd actually shown it and everything. And then, if you guys missed me talk about the Soviet military liaison mission cards, you guys can go back and watch this from the beginning on the replay, because that's a different story there. So, um, but yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's and again, if I did, let's say I did want to sell this, I've seen uh, shows where they have people that say, "Oh, I got a piece of the Berlin Ball," to pawn shops and shit like that, Pawn Stars or whatever. There's no way to authenticate this. So whether it's probably worthless because there's literally no way to authenticate it. I can tell the story, but there's no way for them to say, yeah, you're telling the truth or you're lying. There's no way for them to know that. So, um, it's just like baseball cards or comic books. When comic books are graded and if they're signed, um, the signature, uh, if they can't authenticate that signature by, let's say it was, Lou Ferrigno or, whoever, Leonard Nimoy, whatever. If they can't authenticate that signature, it's worthless. They won't give you a dime for it because they can't authenticate it. So same thing with the Berlin Wall piece. So, shit, we're at 53 minutes. Damn, we talked a whole time about this stuff. Um, hey guys, I started watching The Expanse based upon your recommendations. I don't know if anybody in here is the people that recommended it, but I know a couple of you did for sure. But if I remember correctly, there was several of you guys that said, "Oh, you got to watch The Expanse." I've watched. I'm almost done with the first season, and it's pretty damn good. So, and I hear that it actually gets better after the first season. And that's relevant because if you saw my other video, Telltale Games is actually making a video game based upon The Expanse. They're making a point and click adventure game, and yeah, I thought that would be. I better watch the show before the game comes out. Who knows when the game's going to come out? But The Expanse has like 6 seasons or something like that. So I want to have that under my belt so that if the game pops and then I'm playing the game, I will understand the story and all that shit, you know. So, but I don't know if any of you guys are looking forward to that. The Wolf Among Us 2 is coming out from them. The first one was incredible. Like I was saying at the very beginning of the video, Elden Ring just dropped today. I haven't gotten it yet. Has anybody been playing it today? So, because I know it, some of you might have had it pre-ordered. Has anybody already been playing Elden Ring, or did any of you have like a review copy or anything like that? Saw some gameplay of Elden Ring, and even though I haven't finished a Souls game, it makes me want to play one. I never played any of the Souls games, so that was one of the things I was going to ask was, um, I got my notification from Steam, Edward, that it was out. So now, because you're in a different time zone, maybe it's different for you, but it's out for me. I got the notification already. So, um, but yeah, I never played any of the Souls games. So the Dark Souls games. So, um, not me. I suck at Souls like games. I'm unable to get good. Get good, noob. Right? So, are they as hard as what I've heard? I've heard that they're some of the hardest games ever made, the Dark Souls game. So, I've heard it's completely amazing if you like those games. I haven't heard from people that usually don't play them. I played Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3 and Bloodborne extensively. Okay, so Bloodborne is another like another same engine like type thing. Bastille, anyone play D&D online? I played. That's another one that I was back in the day, back when I used to pre-order shit. I was on the beta for D&D online, pre-ordered it, had all the pre-order bonus shit, the collector's edition, the whole thing. And uh, I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was about that game that I couldn't get into it. Now, Bastille, I'm just going to assume that from you asking that question, that you have not gone down to my playlists, to my in-game footage playlist, because I did an in-game footage of D&D online. I actually did the tomb that Gary Gygax narrates, the dungeon himself before he died. Um, him narrating it. It's on my page. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my channel. Um, if you want to watch that, if you haven't already seen it. So maybe you're asking if anybody's currently playing it. I played it quite a bit when it came out, and something burned me out on it. I don't remember what it was. I can't put my finger on it, but it didn't feel to me. It didn't feel like a representation of tabletop D&D. It didn't grab me the same way that like Baldur's Gate does. You know, who knows? Edward Green says Bloodborne was an inspiration for Nerovia. That's interesting to know. Perhaps I should play Bloodborne then. They are the best action RPGs ever, but you have to approach playing them with an arcade sensibility. You will die a lot until you learn enemy patterns. It's old school like that, but great gaming. Okay. Colin says, I played The Surge, which I'm told is a sci-fi Souls-like game, and it wrecked me. To me personally, it's less hard. It's more like, are you okay with trying to kill the same boss 20 or 30 times and memorize everything leading up to? Okay. So I have played games like that. To me, what you're describing reminds me of the arcade game Dragon's Lair. Because Dragon's Lair, the only way you could beat Dragon's Lair was you had to memorize the pattern of, I have to roll to the left, I have to jump on this thing, I have to swing here, I have to, and you had to do it in an exact order, timed to get past to the next scene. That's what I immediately think of when you describe that type of gameplay. Uh, okay, correct. Although it's possible, I watched it. Okay, Souls games are what I was referring to. Yep. Um, and I would almost argue that Dark Souls are not action games; as they're strategy games with action controls. Dragon's Lair is like the best old school comparison to Dark Souls, memorizing where enemies are, attack patterns, and what the boss. Okay. Um, Bastius has lost a lot of coins on Dragon's Lair. No shit, you and me, but both, buddy. I am certain that the Pasadena, California, the arcade that I used to go to on Colorado Boulevard, I'm pretty sure I paid for at least one full like arcade game that that guy bought and put into his arcade. I'm sure I paid for at least one of those myself in quarters. However many thousands of dollars it was to buy that game or whatever, I'm sure one of those that he bought after my time was something I helped pay for. So, Colin, it's put so much money into Dragons, it would have been cheaper to just go to the cinema. Exactly. Yep. But it was the most addictive thing because you wanted to see the next scene, and the only way to see that next scene, you got to beat the previous scene. And uh, golly, and do you remember? That's the only game I ever remember. If you got decently into deeper into the game, um, you would have there was standing room only around you, like because there were people that hadn't seen that far into the game at the arcade. There were other kids that hadn't seen what happens next, and so you're completely like the sun is blocked out by bodies surrounding you while you're playing the game, and you're so hyper focused because you don't want to fuck up that it's like you're in this cone because like the sun is now blocked. Whatever light is in the room is blocked out by all the people surrounding you, trying to see, and then the little kids are trying to push in to see if they can see the screen. Um, yeah, I remember it was a pound to go when other games were less than half of that. I'm old enough to remember when it was. I think it was 50 cents for Dragon's Lair. I think. I don't think it was ever as cheap as a quarter. I don't think so. I think it was minimum 50 cents. But yeah, yeah, that was the only game I ever remember that many people. You get that kind of a crowd around you because you were getting to parts of the game that some of them had never seen before. So they were dying to know what happens next. You know, um, I miss arcades in the U.S. I wish they were still a thing, but I understand why they're not. I find them every once in a while. You'll find an arcade. Everywhere. I was in Cheyenne, Wyoming, last summer, and they were actually having. I was there for a completely unrelated reason, and with my luck, they were having a beer festival right in the town square across the street from an arcade, a big ass arcade too. It was like they knew Greyhawk 4x4 was coming, and they had a beer festival and an arcade literally half a block apart. And there was two game stores that were within a block from that arcade. There was two like actual D&D game stores that I ended up going to. So you within one city block there, square block, you had two game stores, an arcade, and a beer festival. And Greyhawk 4x4 was in town. So a pound is worth about $2 then. Okay. Um wow. AJ, the former German beer professional, showing up in the arcade is like a boss showing up in the video game. I did play the shit out of what the heck did I play in there? I played uh I played one oh I played the Indiana Jones pinball machine. I loved that pinball machine. I played the shit out of that when we were there, and then I played was it Galaga? I think I put a bunch of money into Galaga while we were there. That was my other standby was Galaga. So um, we have a large scale at the Minnesota State Fair. I've been to a lot of state fairs, never to Minnesota, but it's on the list. I'd like to go to all of them at some point. So, um, well, we're over an hour, guys. I'm sorry I took up so much time talking about the old Cold War and the Russians and all that bullshit, but I thought that it was more than appropriate given that what has happened in the last 24 hours. I feel like we're going backwards. Um, so it's kind of weird. So I've always wanted that Indiana Jones pinball machine. The Spider-Man one looks good too. Dungeons and Dragons and beer. Yeah, that's my motto. D&D, beer, video games, all that. And I'll even add Kiss to the to the to that group of beer, D&D, video games, uh, Kiss. Those are my uh, obsessions. So I think that's gonna do it, guys. Um, we ended up getting quite a few people in here, 8 at least. So, um, but yeah, thanks for letting me indulge. If I could have any arcade machine, it would be Robotron. That's a good choice because Robotron. One of the things that about arcade games that I looked for if it was a game I wanted to play a lot of was um, how much uh, progression is there in the levels. Like with Galaga, the fact that you could add an additional ship. Then they had challenge rounds and stuff like that to kind of switch up the gameplay. And Robotron, if I remember, it was another one that was like that. So, hey, John showed up. How you doing, John? 25th anniversary Galaga Miss Pac-Man for me. Boy, Miss Pac, the original Pac-Man. I don't think I played that much because I don't think I was. I don't know what I was doing when that one was out. But when Miss Pac-Man came out, I had a buddy in Pasadena that I was in school with, and me and my buddy Reggie, and they had a Miss Pac-Man at. There was like a little Irish bar. I'm talking going back when two kids could go into a bar and play a video game in a bar with the cigarette machine next to the video game. Because you couldn't imagine that now, right? You couldn't imagine kids walking into a bar at all, let alone, you know, going in there and there being a cigarette machine next to the video game they're playing. You know, so or Sinistar because it's unique. Sinistar. I don't know if I remember that one. Tempest, that was a good one. There was a lot of people that were a lot better at Tempest than me. All right, guys. Well, I think I'm over an hour. I got to go spend some time with the wife. Got to turn the news back on and find out what else Putin has fucking destroyed, and go from there. So, I think I'm probably going to get Elden Ring so I can try it out. No problem, Lapis. Anytime, man. Golden Axe. Golden Axe was pretty much right at the end of my arcade going heyday, but I will do that, Colin. Thanks, guys. And then let's see, what is it? Thursday. So tomorrow we got our D&D game, and then my next live is on Sunday. So I may end up doing a video between now and then if I get into Elden Ring and it's like super stupendous and I want to talk about it, I'll do a video about that. So, all right, guys, we'll catch you on the flip side.